through the worst time we have ever experienced. There seems to be no immediate end in sight. Corona pandemic, now again Nipah, war, flood, fire, loss of life, etc., etc. Let's pray to the Omnipotent to see us through the Spirit. Let's pray for a minute, please.
You can keep sitting and pray. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief guests of the day, Mr. Abhi Krishna, Mr. Ravindranath Kamath, moderator, Mr. S.R. Nair, Vice President, Mr. A. Balakrishna, Honorary Secretary, Mr. Jomon George, MC members, past presidents, all esteemed members of Kerala Management Association, a warm welcome to all of you. Firstly, I am privileged and honored to announce the most magnificent news to all of you. As you know, we have been conducting and improving year after year by year, under the able leadership of our presidents and teams. And now the good work has been rewarded. For the first time ever, we have been awarded the most coveted awards from IMA, our parent organization. The credit goes to our president, Mr. Madhav Chandran, executive committee members, management committee members, our outstanding and ever active team led by Executive Director Jojo, which also includes Padma Kumar, Prijit, and others. All past presidents and team, and the most distinguished members of KMA, hearty congratulations and big thank you to one and all for your unstinted effort and support. KMA has been unanimously selected for two of the most prestigious annual awards for Local Management Association, LMA of India. The first one, the Best LMA Award 2021. The second, one of the most improved LMA Award 2021. These have been achieved, yes, deserve a round of applause. These have been achieved only because of the commitment, dedication, and perseverance of the managing team of Kerala Management Association. This certainly demands a celebration, indeed. And our president will announce the same at the next meeting. Let's all rejoice and cheer of this great success. We have been organizing a number of programs every week, like evening lectures, panel discussions, women-specific sessions, digital marketing sessions, CEO conclave, leadership sessions, MSME sessions, memorial lectures, and very many others. So let's come to today's session, StartCon. Starting a business entails understanding and dealing with many issues: legal, financing, sales and marketing, intellectual property protection, liability protection, human resources, and more. But interest in entrepreneurship is at an all-time high. And there have been spectacular success stories of early stage startups growing to be multi-billion-dollar companies such as Uber, Facebook, WhatsApp, Airbnb, and many others. Starting a business is a huge commitment. Entrepreneurs often fail to appreciate the significant amount of time, resources, and energy needed to start and grow a business. We, KMA, has been presenting many startup companies and their heroes as well. This year, our past president and program committee chair, Mr. S.R. Nair, started a new initiative to introduce some of the most brilliant startup companies and the brain behind each companies to us. The initiative is called KMA StartCon, or Startup Conversation. This is a 9th Startup Conversation session. The first session was with Mrs. Sujit K. Bhaskaran, Gigs Board India, and Ms. Fauzi Nizam, Cutie Pies Cakes Private Limited. Then Mr. Joy Sebastian, Technesia Software Technologies Private Limited, and Mr. Joe Zachary of X-Travel Money, Mr. John Matthew, Rifi Technologies Private Limited, and Mr. Gis George, Transite Systems Private Limited. On the International Women's Day, we had Ms. Sonia Mohandas, Wafer Chip Technology Solutions Private Limited, and Ms. Ganga Raj, co-founder and director, I Love 9 Months. Mr. John T. Mathai, Iro Technologies Private Limited, Mr. Vignesh Casey, Vaishishta Research Private Limited, and then we had Ms. Devika Chandrasekharan and Mr. Devan Chandrasekharan, Fuselage Innovations Private Limited. We also had Mr. Binu Augustine, Henka Medicals Private Limited, and Mr. Sujas Surendran, 8V Digital Transformation Private Limited, and Mr. Jodis KS, Sapi Zapi Hire, and Mr. Alvin George, BST Mobility Solutions Private Limited. Today, we are presenting two fabulous startup entrepreneurs, Mr. Abhi Krishna, co-founder and CEO, K-Stock and Enterprise Dental Software, and Ravindranath Kamath, co-founder and CFO, Next Education India Private Limited. To introduce the speakers and to have an interesting conversation with them, we have our own Mr. S.R. Nair, past president and management committee member of KMA. He is a serial entrepreneur, author, adjunct professor, and a mentor. With this, over to you, Mr. S.R. Nair. Please take this forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair of today's meeting, Nirmala Lile. Distinguished invitees today, KMA members, students, ladies and gentlemen. I would now read out the very brief resume of both the gentlemen and then engage them on a conversation. As we have been doing it in the past, most of you will be kept muted. In case you have a question, please put it in the chat mode. I will take it from there and announce you and ask the question on your behalf. So next 1 hour, I hope it would be very interesting and enriching. Okay, I'll start with the resume of Abhi Krishna, Abhilash Krishna of K-Stack. It is fundamentally an enterprise software. Abhi Krishna is a founder of K-Stack. K-Stack is on a mission to enable dental establishments to operate at their highest potential. As the founder and CEO, most of his time is spent building cohesive leadership teams and driving clarity for the entire organization on how it accomplishes the mission. K-Stack is in its sixth year of existence, had grown to become a highly valued company and had been able to raise an investment of more than $60 million with development centers in Trivandrum and Cochin and offices elsewhere. By now, the platform has more than 5 million secure patient records. That's a brief resume. We'll know more about Abhi Krishna as I engage in the conversation. From a perspective, Ravindranath does not really qualify as a startup entrepreneur, but definitely he will qualify because he had funded many startup companies and also be director of these companies. But otherwise, Ravindranath Kamath actually runs Education Private Limited. Capacity as an ecosystem builder and an ecosystem supporter. Okay, Mr. Ravindranath Kamath has been requested to join the StartCon session in the capacity as startup ecosystem builder and supporter. Mr. Kamath, an astute observer of the startup ecosystem, has been able to identify many startups in their infancy and had funded and mentored them to scale. He is the co-founder, CFO, and director on board of the Next Education India Private Limited. Having extensive cross-platform experience in internet and e-commerce sector, he adds value as a mentor in many startups in Kerala on the said domains. Mr. Ravindranath Kamath is a IITian. He's an instrumentation engineer, BTech in instrumentation engineering from IIT Kharagpur. Okay. Now, gentlemen, welcome. I'll start with Abhi and then I will come to you, Ravi into that comment. So if I call you Ravi, if I call you Kamat, both are same. Okay, don't get confused. Since you said that, you have a little confusion on how being addressed. Okay, now, Abhi, now the question is, CareStack is considered to be one of the highly funded companies which has started up in Kerala. Okay, now if by the data that is available to us, your funding, of course, you have been seed funded by people such as Ravi Indranath Kamath and Vinod Jose, etc. And thereafter, you had gone for 3 rounds of funding in 2019, 2018, 2019, and 2021. That's what I understand. And the total funding in Indian rupee terms exceed about 500 crore. That's what I understand from the data that is available in the public domain. Okay. Now, I'll start with this question. Now, what has been the critical success factor, Abhi, in terms of your list 3, and you will be able to highlight others as well? Is it because you have been able to have a co-founder in the USA who had been having distinguished experience as a practicing dentist there? Or is it because you had been funded many times over and you have been able to grow your organization very well? Or is it because your solution, CareStack, addresses both clinical and administrative aspect, and therefore there is a uniqueness in your solution? You can start answering that, sir. Abhi.
Sure. Yeah. No. See, some problems are really tough to manage, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, an industry like healthcare is probably several years behind other kinds of industries which are more inclusive of change, right?
Yeah.
So healthcare is riddled with systems, processes, and frameworks which really do not belong to the modern era.
Okay.
Right. And if the end state result is quite often what we call as a load on the consumer, on the patient, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The delivery of a healthcare service, the cost associated with it, the outcome for the patient is really not in an optimal condition, right? And in order for you to subvert this and make it a healthy experience for the patient, you need a complete overhaul of the systems.
Okay.
So something of that nature involves you to go after a domain which is very complex from a cross-border setting. So we serve only the US market.
Yeah.
It requires you to build sophisticated systems that can create very efficient healthcare practices, which can create extremely convenient, accessible, and transparent experiences for the patient, and fundamentally reduce the total cost of care for the insurance companies.
Right.
That's a tall order of work, right? And it's just not building systems when it comes to healthcare. It's basically taking these systems and pushing it through to the market to the extent that you're really going against the companies which have been around for the last 50, 60 to 100 years, right? So you're one is building really complex systems and then getting it distributed and adapting to the change management that comes along with the propagation of such systems. Such an endeavor requires cash, right? So it requires a lot more money, right? We are funded $60 million, but we should be funded, 4 or 5 times more that money pretty soon. You require a lot more cash to basically go ahead and invert an industry which has never seen the power of digitization and then really work the entire pipe till the consumer basically gets the benefit of digitization, right? So the uniqueness of the market, the nature of the problem that we solve, right? We solve the hardest of the hardest problems, and then the opportunity and the way in which we are solving the problem, right? So let's look at it this way. If you want to basically improve the healthcare delivery and outcome and cost for the consumer, you could really start with a health offering that you can sell to the consumer directly, or you could really create a system that you can provide to the physicians and make them serve the consumer better, right? So there's multiple ways in which you can solve for the same problem, right?
Yes.
So it's a combination of the market we picked, the kind of solution that we decided to build, and the way in which we have, tried to solve for the problem, that's kind of what, makes us special. And adding to that, we have been at the right place at the right time with the right solution, with the right set of people.
All right. So I think I'll pick out the last one, which you said, that the right place at the right time with the right set of the people. Now, uh, I see you're an engineer from Kerala University, and computer science, IT. Now, coming into, as you rightly said, you are trying to invert an industry which has been existing so in more than about 50, 60 years. So it's not an easy thing. You also said that this requires more cash to essentially do the metamorphosis or the change management that is to be effective. Being at the right place with the right set of people, that was success that you have said. Now, how did you happen to be at the right place at the right time, Abhi? Where did it all start? How did it all start?
Yeah.
Hello.
So I'm not a computer science engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer,
Okay.
for the record, right?
Great. Okay. Yes.
And I have not written a lot of code in my career. After a year or so, I have not been involved in the engineering process. My interest shifted to design, user experience design. Okay. So bulk of my work has been in the realm of
Great.
designing user experience from a customer's perspective, and then really, prototyping those experiences and allowing customers to get a preview of the solution before people go on to build the actual technology, right? So that's kind of my background professionally prior to starting CareStack. And a lot of work that so I started a consulting company which provided user experience design and software prototyping services back in 2010. And a whole bunch of my work was in the realm of healthcare, working with healthcare customers and providing the service to customers involved in care management, insurance management, clinical devices, pharma, med devices, pretty much the whole spectrum. So I'm very familiar with the domain of healthcare and the constituents of the domain that really contribute to the delivery infrastructure in healthcare. Back in 2013, one of our customers, they tried to build a chronic disease management system. And they wanted to start with a disease called as obstructive sleep apnea, which is really obstruction of your airway constricts, and then it basically obstructs the intake of oxygen. And because your oxygen levels are low in your body, it triggers a nighttime heart attack, right? So they wanted to use technology to screen and diagnose patients for sleep apnea, and then, get them treated using an oral appliance, or what you call as a mandibular advancement device that shifts the lower jaw down and allows the intake of oxygen, as opposed to steering people towards using a positive air pressure device, which is a very inconvenient way of treating sleep apnea, and which is a reason for non-compliance. I was part of a similar project, right? And, the peculiar thing about the project is that, the treatment of sleep apnea is really done by a dentist. Okay, so the dentist has to really fit the oral appliance for the patient. And that put me inside a dental office for really 2 years, 2013 and 14. I was working within a dental setting, all the way from front office to clinical to back office. So 2 years I have really been inside a dental setting, right? And the nature of the work was to integrate sleep apnea management into a general dentistry office, right? So you're dealing with watching people behavior, existing standard operating procedures, and then B, you're looking for the most optimum way to integrate a medical specialty inside a dental setting and integrate systems together. Okay. Now, what we figured out during those 2 years is, before you can really think about integrating a medical specialty inside a dental office, there is a real need to modernize a dental office, right? And that starts with simplifying how a dental office works, right? So in a dental office, 80% of the market is truly fragmented. It's owned by mom and pop shops, single doctor owners who have never been taught to manage a business in a dental school. And then 20% of the market was consolidating under private equities and forming dental enterprises. And then, you have far more professional management, right? And then the offices typically work with 5 to 6 different software systems, none of which are tightly integrated with one another. So there's all kinds of problems, not just on the cost basis or on a direct cost perspective, but even indirectly because of the inefficiencies that result from fragmented data separation, right? So we decided to really go about and change that state of affairs. And thankfully, the office that we were working in belonged to the largest dental insurance company in US called Delta Dental of California. It's almost a monopoly. They own 70% of the market share. So back in 2015, in 2013, when I went out to build the sleep apnea management systems, that's when Kamath, and it was just a piece of paper. I had a broad idea of the problem we are solving from an end consumer's perspective. And, Kamath was my first investor, right? Back then it was just when a piece of paper back in 2013. And by 2015, we had made the first pivot, and we had decided that instead of going after a broader problem like sleep apnea management, let's fix the dental space first. So in 2015, I presented to the dental director of the practice about creating a cloud-based solution where we can unify all the systems that is needed to manage the daily operations inside a dental office, and then augment those systems with patient-facing services that improves the convenience, accessibility, and transparency for the patient, and then work the pipe up and go all the way to the insurance industry and use this data to reduce the total cost of care. A similar sense of direction was presented to Mark, the guy who was basically looking after the dental office that Delta Dental of California owned. And then it all came together, right? So Mark bought into the idea, Delta Dental bought into the idea, right? And then we started building the company, in that direction, right? This whole sequence has occurred to me several times in my life, right? So, of meeting Kamath, right? And back in 2013, when it was just me and a piece of paper, to working inside an office, and then, finding Mark and the office belonging to Delta Dental of California. And then you're solving for a high value problem at the right time with the right set of people. It's almost like the universe conspiring to make things happen for you. That's
So you're a classical example of Paulo Coelho's theory. Very good. So now, so we understand as to where you come from and how did you get as you rightly said, that being at the right place at the right time, and that happened to be so. I will park you for a minute to go to Ravi, because since you referred to Kamath, so I'll definitely want to ask Ravi this question. Of course, Ravi, you have been running Next Education, close to about 300 crore company, work in the capacity as a CFO and co-founder. And of course, I know you very well for the last so many years that we have come together and talked to each other. And of course, TIE is another connecting link that we have had. We have seen you funding those very startups at the very, very nascent stages and taking it forward. Now, what I would like to ask you related to Abhi is that what fascinated you to work with Abhi Krishna to work out the solution? You must have seen there are if you really look at the number of registered startups in Kerala, over 2,000 registered startups are there, and everybody actually has one or the other way of unique. You wanted to fund him. What was the fascination? What actually you saw in him and his company and the product for you to fund him? Will you be able to give us a clarity on this? Yes, right.
I think that would be a tough one. So I think it's mostly, I think, businesses are built by people, right? Mm-hmm. And when I had met Abhi, I think the nature that stood out is that there is no bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. There is a purpose. There is no bullshit. It's straight talking, no mincing words. And he has an idea, I think, and I think somehow the chemistry worked. I think that's where I put it.
Ravi, it is easy to say, but how does this somehow the chemistry works? Will you tell us, please?
See, it's like this, right? I think every investor will have a thesis. as to what will work, right? I think it's not dissimilar from what we think should be the price of Reliance share tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
It's like that, right? So there is a thesis that everybody will have, and it's probably difficult to quantify, right? So when I look back, and again, I'm saying in hindsight, right? When I look back, what has worked is essentially that Abhi has been able to create a system without having a system at that point, right? So his UX experience was quite clever, that you can actually present a product even before the product is built, right? So if with a visualization tool you can do that and convince somebody to do the project, or to go with you, it's more like go with you, right? Then I think there was scope.
All right, so I will say that
That's probably what it is.
Yeah, from whatever you said, Abhi has this extra sensory perception, and you have this extra sensory perception to identify the extra sensory perception of Abhi. If I say like that, will you accept it?
Probably, I think it's
No,
probably,
Kamath, I can.
I know, Abhi.
Yeah, no.
No, I'll come to you because I want an answer from you as well, Abhi. Yeah, but let Ravi complete it. Yes, please go ahead, Ravi.
I think see, in hindsight, when I think about it in hindsight, I think what probably worked is the fact that it was a US market, India development.
Yeah.
Right. The second is even though we see a lot of startups, probably there are 2,000 startups in KSUM itself, right? You don't come across a lot of people who really have that passion, and it's visible, right? When you speak, you can figure out certain things. It's evident, and you have to be a little bit off also. You can't be a very conventional guy and make it very large. It doesn't work. You have to be slightly off, right? I think that fit.
Ravi, okay, very good. So happy, see, now that I know you very well, we have worked together. We have actually been many cases that we had also worked. See, I had always seen in you, very unassuming type of a person, looking at people as anybody looks at, and suddenly comes out with this perception of this could be the place that I could be funding. And I also see that not only in Abhi's case, you also had funded many other cases, and your failure rate has not been that very high. Because in seed funding and in angel funding, etc., the loss factor also could be very high. But then looking at you, I realized that barring one or two, most of those investments that you made at the startup stage had been successful. Thank you very much. Let me come back to Abhi, because Abhi raised his hand telling that, okay, he would like to say the extra sensory perception part of it. Go ahead, my friend.
Sure. No, I wanted to fill in for Kamath. I think there are a few things about Kamath that differentiates him, right? His sense of empathy is very high.
Great.
Right?
Okay.
He's super empathetic to the path of an entrepreneur, because he has gone through the ride himself, right? So he understands that this is a tough journey, right? So that's very high. He has had a humble upbringing, right, during his teenage and childhood years. So he kind of connects well with people who are, who have that similar kind of a mindset, right? So who are easy to access, where we can communicate freely without barriers, and a transparent conversation is always possible, right? So that's the second thing. Third thing, he has a confirmation bias for people who like to sell, right? So he's a victim of his perceptions that if you can sell, then a company will be formed, right? Which I don't subscribe to. Now, after 6 years, I have moved away from that side. So Kamath has this natural fascination for sales-led founders. Right? And in my case, we raised capital for CareStack without a product. It was
fascinating, very fascinating. Yes.
Done, right. So, and part of why that happens is really because of my prototyping and user experience background, I could really build the solution out to give a sense of direction on what kind of problem we are solving towards. And you get to align people faster, right? And you get to show them a sense of direction and some real path towards the value of the solution you're trying to create, right? So those kinds of skills really helps a consultative sales happen. But Kamath has a much deeper confirmation bias that if you are a good salesperson, a business gets formed and it basically grows, right? And lastly, there is an unsaid thing that has basically connected us all these years. It's been 8 years since I have met Kamath.
Yes.
Right. So Kamath has been when I started, right? I had pretty much no credentials to myself, absolutely none, right? And till then in my life, nobody has really taken a bet on me, none.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Kamath was the first guy to really take a bet, right? The subsequent growth of CareStack was, at least from my perspective, was largely to not make Kamath fail, right? For that one guy who really took a serious bet on you, how you can really, repay that trust, right? So, so there's something unsaid between us that he had all the reasons to not do an investment, including, I still remember, as we were signing our first agreement, and then he asked me, is there something that I should be scared about, while investing in you? And I basically gave him a statement that perhaps it's me that you should be scared about. Like you can ask him, right? So it's I have told him stuff which ideally you shouldn't be telling an investor when they're about to sign the check, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So there's something, that unknown thing, which still binds us together, where he has this kind of like a brotherly love, right? So it's easy to classify the fourth reason as brotherhood, right? So even though our value systems are vastly different, there is a thread of brotherhood that binds us, right? So that's kind of like, what made him come into the friends, family, and fools round.
Yeah, Ravi is always very, very miserly with the words. Actually, he has a 64-bit processor in the head, which works very fast. But then he is very miserly with the word. He's always measured the words and speak. But then you had actually used the two words. One is a brotherhood, and that is a empathy. They both are, of course, interrelated. And now you make a very good mutual mass. I call it mass mutual admiration society. So great. And I really liked your explanation of you taking it off because you didn't want to fail Kamath. Great. Now, see, looking at you, both of you, you are a mechanical engineer, now user UX, UI expert. And Ravi is an instrumentation engineer, now working as a CFO and a co-founder. Okay, so your whatever learning that you have had, that is not what actually you're practicing, but you have moved on into something better, something acceptable, and something which is now. Before I go to Kamath, I have this question to ask you. See, he said, because you have your prototyping prototyping skills, as well as user experiences skills, you have been able to present a product without actually making a product. And I know, because I have been working in this startup scenario for close to about 8 years now, realizing that without having a product and without having some revenue angle, without having the profitability angle, etc., it's so very difficult for people to get going. So that says there is an ability in you in really observing and telling, and then you must have really pressed some buttons, whether it is in Delta or the person called Mark, etc. So what was the button that you pressed for them to listen to you and say that, okay, let's keep going, let's get going?
Yeah, see, I don't think people buy products, right? People buy solutions to those problems that they feel rigorous pain around, right?
Yes.
The soul of CareStack is simplification of the life of a user inside a dental practice, right? The most precious things for a doctor, a dentist, or people who work inside the office is preservation of their time and peace of mind.
Yep.
When your software systems fail, when you have to work on multiple systems, that's what they lose. They lose quality of life, right? by the very nature of a doctor becoming a small and medium business owner, they have already lost half their life because they're not trained to operate a business.
Yes.
They're clinical people,
Yep.
right? Now add bad systems on top of that, it gets even more miserable, right? So our ability to demonstrate a product from the perspective of how it can simplify their life
Yes.
and give back more time, more peace of mind, control, and money back to them. That's kind of what resonates with our users. It's our ability to qualify pain and then present the relevance of the use cases in a way that directly ties to the simplification of their work and ultimately their life. That thread is what creates buy, and we have done that successfully. Because most of these guys are owning and operating offices, it resonates faster. But in general, that's one piece of it, right? Then there is a broader piece to it, right? About when you form a company and you form a brand and you're forming people to represent a brand, what is the brand promise that your customers should get out of it, right? This has occurred to us over a spread of few years, but over years, we also recognize that it's not really just building a product which can serve the value proposition. It's your brand as a whole. And we had a brand promise for our community, which is to really give them more than what they're ready to pay us for.
Okay.
Right? Now, both these things are very powerful from a end customer's perspective. That could be an investor, that could be an employee, that could be a customer, right? So we have a brand promise that has come out of our life experiences and observations and the interactions that we have had, where we have formed a company which is willing to do more for our customers, internal or external, than what they are ready to pay us for, right? And then for those customers who are our external customers who like doctors, we have translated that brand promise into features, intelligence, support, guidance, mentoring, feedback back to those businesses that simplifies their work and their life. And by the merit of that simplification, they get more time for themselves. They are far more happy. Their quality of life goes up and they make more money. This is the magic portion.
Thank you. Very beautifully said. I would come back to the brand promise a little, but let me ask you this. See, you said your product is working in the US and predominantly those were the customers, those dental establishments were the customers. You also working in a market which is necessarily controlled by the mafia, whether it is a software market or the pharma market or whatever it is. Established status quo players are plenty. So how could you break this? And now you say that you claim to have more than about 2,000 to 3,000, close to 2,500 to 3,000 establishments having aligned with you on your cloud solution. So how could you break this? I understand the simplicity of the product and delivering more than what they expect. I understand that. But how could you break this resistivity or the so-called status quo system that worked or prevailed in the United States of America as far as this solution is concerned?
Yeah, no, so there is three pieces to that, right?
Yeah.
One of the founding principles within CareStack has always been, now I'm able to put it into words, but back then it just used to be your natural behavior, right? But I can synthesize those patterns into words. Is to always try and start from an orthogonal angle, right? So, the mainstream is moving. The smart guys are solving problems which are far more sexier problems, right? So
yes.
Silicon Valley is going after problems like Uber building electric vehicles. So the smart guys will never look at a space like dental, right? Whether you start from dental or build a service directly to the consumer, ultimately you will get in front of the customer or the patient, right? So the orthogonal approach that we took towards transforming healthcare delivery was to focus on dental, which was a market that nobody paid attention to.
Right.
So you pick an orthogonal way of entering in and without attracting mainstream attention, right? So, and we had that kind of like an orthogonal approach at various stages of the company, right? You start coming from the side, you basically bring on a very large dental insurance company as an investor, right? And the path to getting there was to get the dental director of the practice that they owned as your largest shareholder right when you start, right?
Yes.
So our product market fit was not the product per se. It's really the customer putting in $1 million to build a product that we can keep the IP and just have him as a shareholder, right? So you're orthogonal in the way you choose the market, how you build the product, how you establish the go-to-market foundation all along the way, right? So after Delta Dental, we went ahead and brought in the third largest dental distribution company onto the cap table as a strategic investor and as a partner, right? Then you chose a destination like Kerala, which has humongous labor arbitrage in terms of team building, where you can set up, build teams at 1/5 the cost of what our competing businesses would spend elsewhere, right? It took us like 5 years to institutionalize the subject matter expertise, but we have a machine going on right now, which can really produce features at rapid pace at a significantly large cost difference compared to any of our competitors, right? So it's embracing orthogonality is kind of where it all starts. Figure out a way to tackle a problem from the side so that you do not catch mainstream attention. And when you catch mainstream attention, you have built your several layers of resistance so that you can continue to compete, right? So that's the first one. The second bit is, in order for you to start and to be orthogonal, and all you need is confidence and intent, right? For starting off anything, all you need is confidence and intent, and which you get naturally if you are ignorant, right? So in a way, ignorance is kind of where things start.
Yeah.
But once you start and you start moving towards solving a problem, then for you to get your first degree of stabilization, you need something beyond confidence and intent. You need your ability to unlearn and relearn and learn. You need to basically get inspired and become ambitious, right? And then you have to build endurance for pain, till you get to the finish line. So these are things that you need to basically build, right? So learning and unlearning to acquire these skills, that's the other bit, right? So because building these products are really tough, right? So learnability becomes our best friend in terms of allowing us to basically get to the first degree of stabilization, right? And then thirdly, when you're basically in a market like ours, you're really taking on the bulls. So if you're going at the bull beat, you have to be prepared for the horns.
Yes.
Right. So that's kind of given, right? The market doesn't care if you are if you have spent 6 years building something, whether you don't have money in the bank, the markets don't give a damn thing, right? So that's just the way of life, right? So if you have chosen to basically compete, you basically have this mindset of you just have to be prepared for the horns, right? So that learning has then got to be translated to the people who form the core of your movement, right? You're building a company like a movement. A company is nothing but a aggregation of people. So all the learning, endurance, and ambition that you have had, go ahead and translate it as much as down to your troops so that they can march this journey along with you, right? And then lastly, once you get to a degree of stabilization and you are moving towards becoming a materially important company, you need something way more beyond passion. You need real world skills, skills that will basically take you into an orbit of growth, right? And those skills might not necessarily be present from where you came in from, and you'll have to learn to bring those skills from elsewhere. So it's a continuous process of integrating skills that you don't have, right? You always start with what you have, and with an understanding of who you are, what you are, people but once you have gone through a degree of stabilization, then as you have aspirations to become a materially important company, you go ahead and basically place your bet on skills, right?
Very well said, Abhi. In fact, I have been For me, it's something like a deja vu. I have been teaching entrepreneurship, and there we used to classify entrepreneurship one as causal, the other thing as effectual. And you have been telling me the story of effectual entrepreneurship. You know what you have and what you are and where you are, and then from there you built it up. And every googly that came to your side, you consider that you put that took as an opportunity. In fact, for a person who had actually started writing solutions for the sleep apnea, he is now having a solution that is to take care of the dental industry, to simplify and deliver more value. So it's a classical example of an effectual form of entrepreneurship. Okay, that is one. And you said about orthogonal. Personally speaking, again, a sort of a deja vu in the sense that some 25 years back, I was into IT industry, and I was into IT systems. Okay, a system integration company, and I wanted to be the Bill Gates of Kerala. That is how I happened to be here. But later I realized that that is not the way things are. Things are much more murkier. Things are much more unmanageable. At that point in time, we started a small company called Stallion Systems, which is based on RFID and barcode. And that company, with the limited competition, as you rightly said, because dental software industry, which is not being looked at by the biggies, and similar to that, we have now grown to something close to about 200 crore company based on that. That the orthogonal aspect of that. People who are listening to Abhi, I would definitely like to take this as the biggest takeaway for you. You see, there are four things that he had said. One is the orthogonal aspect, actually. Okay, trying to find out or pivoting your solution to something which has lesser competition. Second that he said is the effectuality. They're trying to change. Okay, learning. Okay, going with that. The third that he said is the daringness that you had exhibited in taking the bull by the horn. He said, I would rather take the horn. And the last word is actually integrating real world experiences. Today, Abhi can afford to, but when he started, he couldn't have afforded to do the real world experiences. Great to know your thing, and that, I mean, no wonder you happen to be one of the most highly funded companies and moving northward. Okay, let me just go to Kamath had been actually looking at all of us. So let me just engage him for a while before I come back to it. See, Ravindranath Kamath, so you said, I mean, your friend or your...
Can I stop my video? I think it's eating into my bandwidth, and I'm hearing the
okay, you stopped the video, but you're available. Your voice is there, right?
Yeah, voice is there. It's
right.
just becoming choppy. I'm hearing in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so are you on the system or on the phone?
System.
How could it be? Okay, anyway, stop the video, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Ravi, see, in fact, here Abhi spoke for you as to the brotherhood, the empathy, and the person who had seen it all and trying to basically build it up. Now, today, Abhilash Krishna can say all these things, as he rightly said. He said 6 years back, I wouldn't have said all these things that I'm speaking now. 6 years back, did you know that all these things would happen?
Sorry, could you repeat that, sir?
See, when I was talking to Abhilash,
6 years back?
Yeah, 6 years. When I was talking to Abhilash, he was telling me so many cases, which he said 6 years back, I wouldn't have had words to explain this, but 6 years later today, I could say that how I traversed and how I did a journey. So now I'm asking the question, you were the first one to fund him, and you funded him based on empathy, the brotherhood, and you had seen something in that solution. Whereas he had actually started a solution for sleep apnea, then get into the company dental solutions. So 6 years back when you funded him, did you really know that okay, this is going to be like this?
No, you can't. It doesn't work like that, right? You have to take a bet, right? And typically it's on the person, right? And all you can do is, once the bet is taken, work with the person that you have decided to invest and work with him in a way that you can add value more than the money, right? It's never the money, right? You will never be the richest person. You will never be the person with the ideas or the best of the ideas. You will never be the person with even skills, right? So it is basically, I think, as a investor, the approach that I take is typically, okay, there is certain thesis, right? You have to have a thesis, and the thesis that technology will change the world, right? That's happening. That's a very easier thesis to bet on.
Yeah.
The second is that you have to have an ambitious founder, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, becomes very clear when you talk to the person, it becomes very clear, right? Ambition, having established some track record, right? So he's so when I invest into Abhi, he's already talking about a fairly sizable revenue on the services business, right? So he has established somewhere, and then once you have invested, I think it's mostly about making things work. So the angle that Abhi was complimenting on empathy, right? It's natural, right? If you can't empathize, you are a loan shark, right?
Okay.
All
right. So, but many of those guys are only loan sharks. There are no empathizers among them. How did you happen to be an empathizer?
No. So it's like this, right? So see, again, when you think about startup investing, it might look very romantic, but it is also extremely risky, right?
Indeed.
One should expect in a early startup investment, maybe 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 will succeed, right? That's probably where you will even save your skin there, right? Maybe in half.
Yes.
If you do half, I think you're good. The expected return, hence, becomes very high.
Yes.
Right? So startup investors' expected return is upwards of 25% in terms of IRR, right? Which is not low.
Yes.
So the only difference is you can lose everything and be comfortable with it. So the angle of empathy is to make sure that you have taken a bet. And again, this is my thesis.
Yep.
I work on the thesis that there is no point spreading a lot of investment into a lot of startups, or a lot of areas, right? Because what is most precious for all of us is time, right? So if you're going to spend time on a particular activity, be it your own business, be it a hobby, whatever, right? You have to make it count. So my thesis was, okay, I will take one startup a year, invest into it, and invest time into it. And again, I have a company to run, so I will probably get a couple of hours a week max. So that has to count. And when you do that, and when you actually look at the other side, and he's struggling, and there are things which I can't help. For example, I've never been to US, right? He's trying to set up a business in the US. I can't help him there. I don't understand the culture. Okay, I understand the European culture, but it's vastly different from the US.
I understand.
So I can't help him there.
Okay.
So the only thing I can do is probably not add to the pain and try to solve things which I can solve. So I'm basically a techie at heart, right? And Abhi is sort of the product person. So there are certain bits of tech that I could help him with, right? Which I believe made some difference, right? So it has to be more than what you invest as money that you have to work on. And that's probably the difference in startup investing. And that's probably what I enjoy, right? Because you are actually living that startup's life as well.
I understand.
And of course, you look towards monetary, appreciation as well.
I understand. I understand. Ravi, I would like to know from you, because you said funding one startup. But I had seen you funding Shastra. The latest one is HR Solutions. Of course, Abhi. Then there was another company called Pling, etc. So, what is your learning from all this investment? You have worked with a person like Abhi, who is having farsighted, the ability to take the bull by the horn. You have worked with the Shastra people. You have worked with many other people as well. So, insofar, having done this level of investments as startup investments that you have done, what is your current take on how do you go about things? Or what is your experiences on investing one company at a year per annum? Yes, please.
I think every company goes through a cycle, right?
Okay.
And as a person grows, as a company or a person, right, goes through different phases of life, right? I think I'm clear as to where I can probably help. See, I'm not probably the person who can help on a already large scale company, right? That I've
Understand.
realized it's not. So if you look at my value addition in K-Stack today is not much, right? Because so he's able to get those, the people with real experience, because there is established track record and there is money, right? So what I've realized is where I can add value is in the early stages.
Yes.
And that is probably where, which is most impactful. Right?
Yeah, but
We
have been talking about things. In fact, there had been some funding that I was also there, where lately you have realized that governance is a very key issue as far as funding is concerned, which you have never considered in the initial stages. What is your take on that, Ravi?
No, absolutely right. And the thing that Abhi was saying, which makes him quite apart from a lot of startup founders I've seen, is that raising money from anybody, right, is making a commitment.
Yes.
Of of course, returns again is what you will get, but at least you have to give it an honest shot.
Yes.
And honesty is, I think, paramount there.
Yes.
Even if in Abhi's case, right, thankfully I've made a decent return, but even if you lose money on that, you will probably not regret, because you've
Yes.
tried.
Yeah.
Right. But when somebody takes the goodwill for granted, and then the objective is to basically get away with the or go away with the capital, or that becomes a problem.
Or vanish into thin air.
Or vanish into thin air. That becomes a problem, right? And I've seen, at least in my last 8 or 9 year startup investing experience, at least 2 companies which I know firsthand, right? Which has happened. So I think that is probably an aspect which when I look at startups now, that becomes a parameter, and I think we are able to guess. So there are certain flags which are obvious, right? The way a startup founder will pitch to you, and you ask the same question maybe a month later, and you get a different answer, there is a problem there, right?
Understand.
And typically, to address this, what what I'm trying to do right now is there are probably a couple of things, right? One is that engage the startup for a longer period.
Okay.
So if we can get to know the startup, work with them for a year, probably you will catch some of those dark trades quicker, right? Second is, I think, due diligence, I think, is important.
Important,
right?
Yes.
And when I did the early investments, it's like on a paper.
Yes.
That has worked in my benefit as well, right?
Understand.
But I think some bit of DD helps, right? To at least. So in the investment that you mentioned, right, there were red flags which I ignored consciously, right? That is a learning, right?
Understand. So you have been, as you have been investing, and there have been many areas that red flags actually come to you, or those learning that comes to you. Coming back to you, Abhi, why?
One more thing, Ashar.
Yeah,
so
tell me, Ravi. Yes.
On this, right? If you look at what the investor community is doing right now, right?
Yeah.
In the early stage investments, right, is to create a network. So as you know, right, we have now the Kerala Angel Network, which Tai has made. I think a network of people can help probably reduce some of those red flags.
Understand.
Right?
Understand.
Early on.
There are 2 elements. One is that, one is the red flag identification, the observation. Second is the cushioning effect. I understand. Yes. Abhi, coming to you, would you be able to see why the name CareStack?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can answer to that, but I have a differing viewpoint on what Kamath has just said, right?
Okay, yeah.
Startups are quite often a social experiment when it gets started, right?
Indeed.
It's a social experiment that gets run in this magical search for a business model that can give you irrational growth.
Understand.
Your rate of growth is your only compass while you run a startup, right?
Indeed.
And your rate of growth comes from your ability to identify a market which gives you the potential for growth.
Indeed.
Right? So even before there is like a product market fit, right? There is a problem market fit, right? Which doesn't get given its due recognition, right? We basically go after, so there's two ways in which you can basically look at venture financing. You can look at venture financing as from a financier's viewpoint, right? Which looks at optimizing for predictability.
Yeah.
Or you can look at ventures as a growth game where you can optimize for possibility.
Yes.
Where there is possibility of irrational growth.
Yes.
So in all those cases where the thesis doesn't lend enough to a high value problem in a large enough market that gives you ample scope for growth.
Okay.
Right? And you go into investments there, the founder naturally becomes at a disadvantage.
Indeed.
Right? So, while I share Kamad's concerns around due diligence and those kinds of things of wanting to know the founder better and things like that, I subscribe to the viewpoint that, most startups have a decent shot at success, right? If there is a market that basically allows for irrational growth, and if you're chasing a high value problem, and if you get that bit wrong, you probably lost more than half the battle.
Understand.
Right?
Yeah. Come to CareStack now.
Yeah. So CareStack is, we were not called as CareStack. When we started, we called ourselves as Fuse Care System.
Okay.
Right. And the current logo of CareStack, the name CareStack, was just picked up in an hour's time during one of the emergencies that we had. One of our competitors, which is a public company which has been around for 70 years, they launched a product to compete in the same segment called Fuse.
Okay.
So we were FUCE and the other one was FUSE.
Okay.
And it created a conflict on the name.
Yeah.
We had to make a quick call as to, for whether we should keep the name and compete or whether we should, pick another name. And we were early on in the process. So we sat about and kind of thought about, what is the name that we should pick that should basically capture the essence of what we stand for, right?
Okay, yeah.
So CareStack is a technology-led healthcare delivery play. And there's a stack of things that you have to really do, which really optimizes care for the patient.
Okay.
Or the process of care coordination and delivery for the patient. And hence we landed on the name CareStack, right? And the logo of CareStack, we wanted to keep it simple, and we wanted to tilt it and tilt it a little bit so that you can see forward motion. It looks like forward motion, right?
Okay.
So that's the rationale behind changing the name from Fuse to CareStack. And yeah.
Next question of mine would say, now that you have come to a domain called the dental establishments and the software, which is end-to-end, both at clinical level as well as administrative level, would you like to stay put there, or would you like to explore the opportunities similar to that? Because as you rightly said in the beginning, that healthcare market and the solutions that is available, and there's a lot of inverting possible. So what's your view on future?
No, dental is not the place that's not the intent.
Yeah.
How did we get into dental? We started from medical of picking a chronic disease like sleep apnea and trying to integrate the dental care system so that the disease can basically be treated well. Yeah. Right. And we figured out unless dental is fixed, you don't have a clear path to fixing a chronic disease. Right. That's how we basically, shifted our priorities from the journey of putting the patient at the center to prioritizing modernization of dental offices before you basically go back to the patient, right?
Yes.
So now our roadmap basically speaks of three things: modernization of dental offices. That's our
Okay.
number one priority, which we are done.
Yeah.
Creating a accessible, transparent, and convenient experience for the patients to interact with the dentist.
Okay.
And our third priority is now to reduce the total cost of care.
Yeah.
And that can only happen if you can integrate the dental care systems into the medical care and into the chronic disease management solution, so that you can go for overall population health.
Yes.
So we are on our third leg of the journey, building connections that connects oral health management into medical care and chronic disease management, and use that combined data as a fuel for the insurance industry to take decisions on insurance plans, fee schedules, etc., which incentivizes the patient to go ahead and embrace predictive and preventive behaviors as opposed to bearing interventional cost inside a medical facility.
Great. Abhi, there's a question from Balakrishnan, who is our Vice President as well as Executive Director at Geojit Financial Services. The investment thesis that this is to Kamath. Oh, this is to Kamath from Bala. The investment thesis you had set in this case was the concept Abhi presented, or the perceived quality you had seen in him presenting the concept. Tomorrow, if Abhi comes to another idea, will you fund based on the trust established? Ravi?
I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
And and I say this probably in benefit of hindsight, right? It's not clear to me at that point.
Yeah.
What we are trying to do.
Yeah.
I think we said, okay, there is a person with a lot of energy, passion.
Yeah.
Chalo karte hain.
So it was
And
a simple
now
thing. At that time, you did not think complicated at all. Very simple
and-
thinking.
and
आप भी
then
अच्छा है, energy है, passion है, चलो करते हैं. That is what you thought. Okay, good.
That's probably it. And I think at that point also, as an investor, I was a novice, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay, right. So it went well. Now,
It
Abhi,
went
your name is Abhilash. Abhilasham എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് aspiration ആണ്. അഭിലാഷിന്റെ ഇനിയുള്ള അഭിലാഷം എന്താണ്?
See, I think the way CareStack is going, this is going to continue for the next couple of years, right? I think for us to build a multi-billion-dollar company, another 7 years is required.
Okay.
And I don't know if I will do a company after that, right? So, the goal right now is to basically get us to the end state and stay true to the mission around which we formed the company. So I get a hangover every year thinking, should we sell a short and stop what we are doing and optimize for a financial outcome?
Yeah.
And then when I go back into my moments of silence and I'm able to think through without the noise around, and all the pain that we have endured till date, and what is it that is really required to prove the point, I come back to this confirmation that, we can't let it just be optimized for a financial outcome. We have to stay true to the course and, and endure more pain till we get there.
Okay, so your Abhilasham വളരെ philosophical ആണ് ഇപ്പോൾ. It is ideally, it's a very highly philosophical one, whether you want to actually monetize this or whether you want to continue it, but then you still are having the horns in your hand to take the bull and then take it forward. Okay. Gentlemen, we have been talking for the last 70 minutes. This sort of conversation could be never ending. We could go on and on and on and on, but then the people may get bored. So what I will do now, Abhilash, thank you very much. It's so nice to have met you. We have not met earlier. And in fact, lots of startups I have personally known, or I must have interacted. Yours is one case that I have not. But one keeps hearing a lot about you from the industry, from the experts, from the funders, and so many people. I'm so glad and so happy and so privileged that I met you and I talked to you. And I definitely do realize that you are a quintessential effectual entrepreneur, and I'm sure that there are much more to come from you as time go by. And as far as Ravindranath Kamath is concerned, Ravi, we have been talking, we have been seeing so many things, and there are experiences that you come across which must be painful, but Definitely industry needs many more Ravindranatha Kamath, particularly the startup vertical needs much more Ravindranatha Kamath in Kerala, in India, and all over the world. I am grateful to you for the time. I am grateful to you for your presence and graceful words. I would send you back to our chairperson of this evening, Nirmala Lily, and thereafter for the vote of thanks. Nirmala, all yours. Thank you, Abhi. Thank you, Ravi. Yes.
Thank you, sir. It was absolutely brilliant to listen to Mr. Abhi Krishna and Mr. Ravindranath Kamath. It was informational and interesting session. If may I pick up a few points, the creation of sleep apnea technology and management system started with me and a piece of paper, finding the right time, right set of people, and 3 principles of orthogonal approach: confidence and intent, learning and unlearning, learning translated to the people, worth skill searching for. Mr. Abhi again said the startups are social experiment. Unsaid things. The greatest gift of life is friendship. That is what we could see in these 2 gentlemen. Unsaid friendship, brotherhood, empathy. Eventually, the chemistry worked and invested. Mr. Ravindranath Kamath also said, created a system without having a system. And honesty is paramount. Due diligence is important. It was unquestionably an overwhelming session. Our moderator brought the best of the 2 outstanding personalities, and we wish both of you greater heights for your missions. As a token of our appreciation for your kind presence and sharing the valuable insight, we would like to present a specially curated live performing memento. Prijit, is it ready? Prijit? Yes.
These are physical, Abhi, these are physical.
Yeah.
This will come to you by post or by courier. Yes.
Now it is on screen. Now it is on screen. Soon it will be reaching to your respective offices. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now to our dear members, please make a note in your diary about our next programs for this month. September 9th, Women Managers Forum, Sri Sandala Marari G, co-founder and Beta Monks, is delivering a lecture. And September 16th, late MKK Nair Memorial Lecture. The speaker is Dr. VP Joy, IAS, Chief Secretary, Government of Kerala. September 18th, Young Managers Presentation. September 21st, CEO Forums speaker, Mr. Dilip Uman, CEO, ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel. September 22nd and 23rd, IMA National Management Convention. September 27th, MSME Workshop Series. Speaker, Sri S. Harikishore, IAS, Director, Industries and Commerce Department, Government of Kerala. And September 28th, Leaders Talks, Mr. V. Ajit Kumar, IRSSE, Managing Director of KRDCL. Looking forward to meeting all of you. Thank you. And now I would like to invite our Honorary Secretary, Chartered Accountant, Mr. Jorman George, to propose the formal vote of thanks. Over to Jorman, please.
Thank you, Senior VP, Ms. Nirmala Lilly, Program Committee Chair S.R. Nair, and the winning duo, Abhi and Ravi, who kept us engaged for almost an hour and little more than that. The very respected MC members and the participants of this StartCon program. Extremely interesting session we had, and Abhi, starting with Abhi, it is really nice that in certain terms, all what is said has been re-echoed rather by Nirmala. So therefore, one thing which struck me as a chartered accountant, finance person, is that, putting business sense into the clinical guys, the clinical people, which really makes a lot of sense. And another thing which I've been talking about is a human arbitrage, which gelled well with Ravi making a statement that, that it is the US market and the Indian development. So all that gelled very well, and no wonder that the empathetic, slightly off guy Ravi found a lot of charm in holding hands with very, very, I would say, relatively unknown person with a new idea of then slowly migrating from medical to dental and coming up with solutions. And the journey is still on. bringing better experience to customers and patients rather at a lower cost is something which should, I think, is the last, as you said, the third leg of the journey. Wish you all the very best, Abhi, for all your plans, and extremely happy that you could spare so much of time and your global experience and deep dives you have done into the processes before getting into this. I'm sure that's one of the major reasons for your success. And Ravi, the brotherly friend and the funder, instrumental engineer turned investor, who is empathetic but still looking at 25% ROI. That is SR. So how do we relate that? And MB, and empathy doesn't mean that you forget ROI. ROI is the key as a finance.
You win some, you lose some. You invest 4 places, you get 1 and you lose 3. So the ROI get evened out. Don't worry.
Absolutely, Ravi was quite vocal on that. So really nice that you could bring that synergy together and keep on funding, Ravi. All the startups, they need a lot of hand-holding and funding support. And to SR, what to say, another well-engaged session, all relevant questions and swapping between the 2 icons that we have on board with us. And SR is father of StartCon series and also of the Leader Talk session. 2 of these programs have played a very important role in KMA getting the best LMA award in category 2 on all India basis from the IMA. So thank you, SR, for that as well, and for the continued support you are doing as a past president, quite beyond the call of the duty that you have entrusted with by the president and the entire team with such great focus on. And thank you very much, both of you, the speakers, for sharing your thoughts. And it was really, really enriching. And we have students as well who are aspiring to get into the next level of thinking and starting their own shops. So insights will surely help them gain new heights. Thank you so much once again, and also to Ms. Amla Lilly for seamlessly coordinating the whole program and the standing in for the president, to the secretariat for the technology and for seeing the program through without any hiccups. To our sponsors, a big thank you, Sarah, Medivision, Heal, and Verma Homes for your continued support. So have a great evening, and Nirmala has already listed the upcoming programs for the month of September. September is going to be really, really eventful. So stay glued, stay tuned to all the programs of KMA. Your participation makes a huge difference. Thank you, the participants, still about 60 plus with us. We had at some point of time 110. It's a good turnout for a program like this with the specific inputs. So thank you all once again. Stay blessed. COVID is not gone. Say, take due care.